For decades, the P-51 Mustang has been celebrated as the king of the World War II skies. Its sleek frame, unmatched speed, and legendary long-range escorts have cemented its place in history books as the aircraft that turned the tide of the air war over Europe. To bomber crews flying deep into enemy territory, the sight of Mustangs overhead meant survival. To the Luftwaffe, it meant trouble. The numbers speak for themselves. Nearly 5,000 confirmed kills in Europe alone, more than any other Allied fighter in that theater. With its Rolls-Royce Merlin engine roaring at full throttle, the Mustang could climb above 20,000 feet in minutes, hit 440 miles per hour at altitude, and reach Berlin and back without stopping, a feat that seemed impossible before 1944. But behind the glory, the P-51 carried a secret that few wartime posters or post-war legends reveal. In close-quarters combat, especially against Germany's feared Focke-Wulf 190, the Mustang wasn't always the invincible predator it was made out to be. Pilots who pushed their luck in tight turns sometimes paid the ultimate price. The truth is, the P-51 wasn't designed to be the nimblest dogfighter in the sky. It was built for something much bigger, to break the Luftwaffe's grip on Europe and escort bombers straight into the heart of Nazi Germany. And this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Because while the Mustang dominated the headlines, its real legacy wasn't about winning quick-turning duels. It was about rewriting the very rules of air warfare. The Mustang's legend was built on speed, range, and kill counts. But in the brutal reality of close-quarters combat, the story was far less flattering. Dogfighting is not about glamour, it's about raw performance. How quickly can you turn? How fast can you climb? How tightly can you force your enemy into your gun sight before he forces you into his? On paper, the P-51D wasn't the ace of this deadly game. At 270 miles per hour, it needed around 20 to 21 seconds to complete a full circle. That might sound fast, but in air combat, it was an eternity. A Spitfire Mark 9 could whip around in 17 or 18 seconds, while Japan's Nimble Zero managed just over 15 seconds at slower speeds. Against opponents trained to exploit turning fights, the Mustang's wide arcs meant danger. Climbing wasn't its strongest suit either. The P-51D pushed out an impressive 3,200 feet per minute, but both the German Bf-109K4 and the Spitfire Mark 14 left it behind, clawing skyward at nearly 4,500 feet per minute. Worse still, the Mustang's controls grew heavy in tight turns. At low speeds, where agility mattered most, it became stubborn and unresponsive, leaving pilots vulnerable to opponents with lighter, quicker handling. The Spitfire's elliptical wings allowed graceful recovery even at the edge of a stall, while the Zero danced through the air with feather-light ease. Mustang aces remembered this well. James Goodson, credited with 15 victories, admitted bluntly, if you tried to turn with the Focke-Wulf at low level, you were dead. Pilots were drilled to avoid these traps. Their Mustang was a racehorse, built for speed and power, not for knife fights in the clouds. Still, many learned the hard way that ignoring this advice could be fatal. If the Mustang couldn't outturn its enemies, then survival depended on fighting smarter. American pilots were taught a simple rule: never dogfight the Luftwaffe on their terms. Instead of spiraling into slow, grinding turns, Mustang squadrons perfected boom and zoom tactics. High-speed dives, lightning strikes, and quick disengagements before the enemy could respond. With the Mustang's speed and range, they could dictate the fight, swooping down like hawks, firing in a burst, and climbing back into the safety of altitude. Lieutenant Colonel John C. Meyer, an ace with 24 kills, compared the Mustang to a thoroughbred. Elegant, powerful, but easily crippled if forced into the wrong kind of fight. Pilots learned to use that raw speed like a weapon, striking from above and disappearing before an opponent could draw a bead. Clarence Anderson, another Mustang ace, was even more blunt. When faced with the Japanese Zero's unmatched turning at low speed, he admitted the Mustang's best move was to run. It wasn't cowardice, it was survival. Reports from combat backed this up. Many Mustang losses came not from poor design, but from pilots ignoring their training, letting themselves be dragged into low-speed duels where the Mustang's high wing loading worked against them. The Luftwaffe knew this weakness well. Experienced FW-190 and BF-109 pilots would bait Mustangs into turning battles, bleeding their speed and forcing them onto the defensive. Those who resisted the trap, however, often turned the tables, proving that with the right tactics, the Mustang could dominate even superior turn fighters. Even in two of them, at the heart of the P-51's brilliance and its greatest flaw was its radical laminar flow wing. Unlike the traditional designs of the Spitfire or the BF-109, this wing cut through the air with astonishing efficiency. Drag was reduced so dramatically that the Mustang could cruise farther, faster, and higher than almost any Allied fighter of its time. With drop tanks, it could escort bombers from England to Berlin and back, covering over 1,600 kilometers in a single mission. At altitude, it could race at 437 miles per hour, outrunning most Luftwaffe interceptors and even giving the Me-262 jet a scare at low throttle. But there was a catch. That same laminar wing betrayed its pilots in the tight, twisting dance of a dogfight. At high angles of attack, airflow broke down abruptly, robbing the wing of lift and sending the Mustang into sudden stalls. German and Japanese fighters offered more warning before a stall, giving pilots precious moments to recover. The Mustang, in contrast, could snap out from under its pilot with little mercy. Once caught in that trap, the Mustang's reputation for speed and range was worthless. German pilots quickly learned to exploit this weakness. They would lure Mustangs into flat turns, knowing the aircraft's efficiency plummeted the harder it tried to maneuver. The FW-190, with its stubby wings and lightning-fast roll rate, excelled in such fights, forcing the Mustang into defensive spirals. For all its fame, the Mustang was never meant to win turning contests. It was designed to strike at the heart of enemy power, and its wing was the key to that mission. The FW-190 advantage. For Luftwaffe pilots, the Focke-Wulf 190 was more than just another fighter. It was their equalizer against the Mustang. Unlike the P-51, which was optimized for long-range efficiency, the FW-190 was built for brutal agility at low altitudes. With thick, stubby wings and one of the fastest roll rates of the entire war, it could snap from one direction to another in seconds. In a scissors fight, where two aircraft weaved and rolled to force the other into their sights, the FW-190 almost always had the edge. In sustained turns, the 190 could hold its speed longer, keeping pressure on a Mustang that was bleeding energy with every second of a flat turn. Once the P-51 lost its momentum, the German pilot could swing around for a kill shot. It was here, at treetop level, that the Mustang's sleek laminar flow wing became its greatest liability. German aces knew this by heart. Manuals and training lectures explicitly pointed out Mustang blind spots and weaknesses, teaching new recruits exactly how to bait them into disadvantageous fights. To them, the Mustang wasn't an invincible predator. It was a dangerous but predictable opponent, one that could be defeated with the right tactics. Against a disciplined FW-190 pilot, an overconfident Mustang could go from hunter to hunted in seconds. But while the 190 could outturn the Mustang, the story didn't end there, because the Americans had one thing the Luftwaffe was rapidly losing: time, fuel, and overwhelming numbers. The strategic role. The Mustang's true strength wasn't in a twisting duel over the countryside. It was in its ability to carry the war straight into the Reich. By 1943, daylight bombing missions were bleeding the U.S. 8th Air Force dry. B-17 and B-24 crews were suffering catastrophic losses, sometimes as high as 30% on a single raid. The Spitfire and P-47 could defend bombers for part of the journey, but neither had the fuel to stay with them deep into Germany. Once the escorts turned back, Luftwaffe fighters tore into the bombers with ruthless efficiency. The Mustang changed everything. With external drop tanks, it could stay with the bombers from takeoff in England all the way to Berlin and back again. For the first time, German fighters faced Allied escorts over their own parkland. And the Mustang wasn't just flying beside the bombers, it was hunting. Squadrons patrolled ahead, above, and along the flanks, ambushing Luftwaffe aircraft as they climbed to intercept. Some even loitered above German airfields, diving down on fighters as they were still taking off. The impact was devastating. By early 1945, Luftwaffe losses averaged between 1,500 and 2,000 aircraft per month, with over half destroyed in combat. Mustang units often posted kill ratios of 10-1 or better. The once mighty Luftwaffe found itself outnumbered, outgunned, and overwhelmed. The Mustang hadn't just filled a role, it had rewritten the entire script of the air war. But as the Allies pressed deeper into Germany, the Mustang's mission expanded beyond escort. Its reach turned it from a defender of bombers into a weapon of destruction, all on its own. By 1944, the Mustang was no longer just a shield for Allied bombers. It had become a sword aimed straight at the Luftwaffe's throat. Escort missions gradually shifted from mere protection to aggressive offense. Mustang squadrons began sweeping far ahead of the bomber streams, searching for German interceptors before they could even form up. When enemy fighters did appear, the Mustangs attacked in coordinated waves, scattering formations before they had a chance to strike the bombers. Even more devastating were the so-called fighter sweeps over German airfields. Mustangs would circle high above enemy bases, waiting for fighters to take off. As soon as a Luftwaffe plane broke from the runway, the Mustangs dove down, catching them when they were still heavy with fuel and barely climbing. It was ruthless, but effective. Many German pilots were destroyed before they even had the chance to fight. By the spring of 1945, these strafing runs escalated into full-on airfield attacks, with Mustangs blasting parked aircraft, fuel depots, and hangars. In a single day, more enemy planes could be destroyed on the ground than the factories could replace in a week. This relentless campaign broke the Luftwaffe's back. From January to April 1945, German aircraft losses were staggering, over 60% in air combat, with thousands more wiped out on the ground. Even the advanced Me-262 jet fighters, which should have dominated the skies, were caught and destroyed during takeoff or landing by prowling Mustangs. By the war's final months, the Luftwaffe wasn't just defeated, it was erased. But despite this overwhelming success, the paradox of the Mustang remained. It was not the sharpest claw in a dogfight. Its power came from something else entirely. In the end, the P-51 Mustang's greatness was never about being the tightest turning fighter or the fastest climbing interceptor. It didn't need to be. What set it apart was its ability to change the entire bombers into the heart of the Reich, and the versatility to shift from escort to hunter, from shield to sword. Its pilots weren't trained to dogfight endlessly in spirals. They were trained to strike fast, use altitude and speed as weapons, and keep the initiative. That philosophy, paired with overwhelming numbers, crushed the Luftwaffe's ability to fight on equal terms. By 1945, the Mustang had become more than a fighter. It was a symbol of Allied dominance. The aircraft that made daylight bombing raids routine when they had once been suicide missions. It hunted German jets on takeoff, burned their airfields to the ground, and erased the idea of German air superiority entirely. Even Luftwaffe aces, men who had fought in the best Germany had to offer, acknowledged its power. Adolf Galland himself called it the perfect escort fighter. But the paradox remains. The Mustang was never the best at the old game of turning duels and knife fights in the clouds. Its real strength was that it played a different game altogether. It was a war-winning machine, not because it outturned its rivals, but because it outlasted them, outreached them, and strangled the Luftwaffe at its roots. The P-51 Mustang's legacy is not one of glamour, but of strategy. It was the fighter that carried the war all the way to Germany's doorstep and ensured it would never recover. Not the nimblest, not the flashiest, but the right plane, at the right time, flown by the right men. And in that role, it became unstoppable.